Wait a couple seconds, see if anyone joins here, and then we'll get going. I'm waiting so long for you, man. I had to, pour up a little something, and just wait for this to go down.
Is that yak or wine, dog? What you drinking?
No, it's wine. It's wine. I stay away from. I can't. A whole cup of this that late, man. I'll be spinning in bed. All right, let's get it going. So, welcome to Big Facts. I'm your host, Aaron Pederson, along with Justin Everett, and we've had a couple days to mull over this disaster Eagles tie in a game that Justin and I didn't want to touch betting wise. Didn't even want to pick straight up. Vomit is the effect that we both got from that, and we're going to dig into the decision that Doug Pederson made in the fourth quarter, also the decision that he made in overtime. Probably going to have two different takes on that because I know, just knowing you're going to fucking hate my take.
Can I start then? So we start in the world of reality instead of your fucking crazy Chicago Bulls top 2 team? Perfect. Let's do it. All right.
Hold on. We're going to cover the Eagles. We're going to transition to a couple guys in the NFL that have rubbed salt in the wound, and then we're going to talk about the Sixers head coaching vacancy. So, Justin, the Eagles.
We're going to start with you crazy and end with you crazy. I'm so excited.
So, Justin, we knew it was going to be a bad game, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't better or worse, really, that I think either of us expected. But there was two decisions that everybody's been talking about over the last 2 days at the end of this game and the end of overtime that has everybody wondering why a head coach would do what a head coach did. And Doug Pederson made two extremely conservative decisions, if you'd like to even call them that. Give me a breakdown of your thoughts when you're watching the game and then your thoughts after the game, given the result.
Your two are obviously the stupid punt. What's the other one you're referring to that was a bad Doug decision?
Well, a lot of people wanted Doug to go for 2 at the end of the game because at that point you got, you can win or you're going to lose.
I'm with you. Okay. The 2-point conversion. I think that we have seen since Carson. I'm gonna address those two questions, then I want to talk about Doug. I think we've seen as Carson's. I'm going to use the word that I hate. Regression has continued. You've seen Doug's play calling come a little bit less aggressive just because he doesn't have the faith. They drafted Jalen Hurts second round. We could talk about all the reasons why Doug's gotten conservative, but he's gotten conservative in Carson's regression. The 2-point conversion doesn't bother me. Carson's shown you in history before, not necessarily this season or even the back half last season, but he shows up when it matters, is what he's historically showed you. Even though he's playing terrible, maybe this is the moment. Let's get him into overtime, win a big game that you should win anyway. Let's build some momentum. I have no problem with that, with the 2-point conversion. The punt is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I can't even explain to you the level of anger is not the right word. Ire is not the right word. I don't even know what the word is, bro. English might not have one. It could be in some Gaelic Russian, dog. I don't know what it was. I know your offensive line makes a terrible mistake. They jump off sides on a game-winning field goal. You're in a bad position. There's 19 seconds left on the clock. You're basically at midfield. If you don't convert a first or score, there's danger, I guess. You're kicking a 65-yard field goal either way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm appalled at the fact that he didn't even take a shot. And a normal shot. Matt Stafford versus Aaron Rodgers. Hail Mary. Send your guys down. Whoever jumps the highest wins. That's it. It's that simple. And if you break down in a prevent defense, Carson's got the legs to get you 15. You would have converted. There's no reason. So let's talk about Doug for just a second so I can hear your take on those calls. So let's look at Doug Pederson, the coach, very briefly over his 4-year tenure from 16 till now. Mm-hmm. What did we learn early, right? When Doug first had Carson was the MVP candidate. Carson was, no question, if he didn't get hurt, going to be the MVP of the league. When Carson Wentz goes down in L.A., what does Doug do? Doug entirely adapts his offense to perform around Nick Foles, who's a very different kind of quarterback. He adjusted quick, he adjusted often, and game by game, half by half, quarter by quarter, made the right decisions and kept adapting. Since that time's come, what have we seen? We saw Nick Foles lose in the playoffs or win in the playoffs on a double doinker, which he shouldn't have. We all know that. That wasn't a game that they won. That's a game Chicago lost. They didn't win that game. They didn't earn it.
Bad team, Yeah, go ahead.
Right. The following season, what do we see? We get to the playoffs with Carson with a practice squad set of receivers who faces Russell Wilson. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody thought they had a chance in that game. It was Russell Wilson. And now we're here 3 games into this season. And what has been the constant, right? So when we talk about predicting or assuming or what we've been looking at, what we see, we follow the rule, not the anomaly, right? So over 4 seasons, I have an anomaly of a Doug Pederson that adapts to his players, that changes his playbook week in and week out, that can make a halftime adjustment. I have 1 year. I have an anomaly. I have 3 seasons of him showing me that he cannot adapt. He cannot learn anymore. He can't change anymore. And to me, it wasn't Doug Pederson. It was Frank Reich and John DeFilippo. We see it now. Look at what they're doing on the teams they're at. Phillip Rivers looks pretty good for 39 years old, having no business playing the way he does. When Carson lost those guys, Doug lost Carson. Carson does not have faith in Doug Pederson. That's why he plays scared. And all of the people saying, I listened to Joe Giglio on the way home tonight, and this moron again, I hate to keep calling him out, but he really is the dumbest person on sports radio in Philadelphia, had a Doug appreciation show tonight, that Carson's the problem and Doug's not. And I called, and I sat on hold for 54 minutes to tell him he was wrong. And I asked him, if Doug is such a great coach and he knows Carson's playing like garbage, right? What does a great coach do? A great coach takes Miles Sanders, who showed you last year. He is an incredible weapon and runs more than 18 times.
He's averaging 5 yards a carry this year. Go ahead.
You run more than 18 times a game. You establish the guy that's showing up. You don't keep counting on your guy that's showing you he's struggling. You adapt that offense over to Miles Sanders, and you find a way to win these games. If you're a great coach, Doug Pederson is a good coach. Doug Pederson won a Super Bowl. Nobody will ever take it away from him. But Doug Pederson, not now, not then, not ever, will ever be a great coach. That's my piece.
Okay, so I'm going to go and answer my own question with this extra point and the decision to punt in overtime. And then I'm going to follow it up with how this roster is currently constructed and if I'm going to place blame, where I'm going to place it. So you get down and and by the way, you scored 16 points up until 20 seconds left in the fourth quarter. So when you got a scramble from Carson Wentz and you scored to potentially tie the game up with an extra point, there was 20 seconds left on the clock. Prior to that, you did pretty much nothing on offense. So you're in a position where you're on your 3rd left tackle. Jason Peters exited the game at one point. Driscoll's on the bench. You have a backup at guard. You have a rookie at guard. Jason Kelce doesn't even look like the same guy anymore. Your best red zone target at this point, Dallas Goedert, is out with an injury. Deshaun Jackson isn't in the game. Miles Sanders apparently was too tired to perform. Rager hasn't played because he's out. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside had 19 snaps and no target. It's like at this point, you're on the goal line and you want to have faith in your guys to punch it in. But who's the target at that point? Is it Zach Ertz, who is going to be the only person that's going to be triple covered when you attempt to get that ball into the end zone? So I understand why he played for overtime at that point, thought he could win it in overtime. They had some momentum. But one of the reasons they even got down the field in the first place was because Hightower managed to get 2 PI calls. So they didn't even drive the ball.
Love?
They didn't even drive down the field, though, is my point. So
right.
I like Hightower on the field, by the way. I think he's going to be a good player. So you go into OT, and look, I see both sides of this, but you're in the worst, by far, division in football. And people would say that they would rather lose than tie and go out swinging. I completely disagree. In what world that anybody's in is losing better than tying? So let me get this straight, because this is how the Eagles start and end every year, Justin. You can attest to this, okay? It's a slow start every year. Everyone's calling for the quarterback or the head coach's job. It's been the
Don't
same.
say something silly. Don't you dare say something silly.
Hold on. It's been the same since McNabb and Andy Reid were there, and it's been the same to this point, okay? So what happens is the Eagles get off to this slow start. The fan base starts throwing around their fists and making these blasphemous statements, and they want this guy in, and this guy needs to be traded. And they start this season 1-4, 1-3, 2-4, whatever the case is. Dallas wins a couple games. They're at about 500. The second part of the season comes, and Dallas takes like a 2 or 3 game lead at some point, right? Then the Eagles somehow get it together and have no business beating a couple teams that they shouldn't have no business beating. Like last year, the Packers in Lambeau Field had no business going in there beating the Packers. And they start getting it together. So you're going to tell me it always comes down to the last week, Justin. And almost every time when it comes down to the last week, Dallas chokes the game away and the Eagles find some way to get into the playoffs. And you're going to tell me that going into the last week, if Dallas is sitting at 8-8 and the Eagles are sitting at 7-8-1, or I'm sorry, if both teams are sitting at, if the Dallas is sitting at 7-8
and we're 7-7
and the Eagles, right, you're going to tell me that if the Eagles control their destiny at that point, that tie didn't matter. Now, when you – hold on. When you go into that last play, there's still 20 seconds left on the clock.
19.
If you miss that field goal, there's what, 13, 14 seconds on the clock?
Advocating a field goal. No one is advocating a field goal.
Joe, I know, but Joe, I understand that. But if you miss – you're still on the 42, right? So Joe Burrow completes one pass to a Tyler Boyd or T. Higgins who's been murking us all game, and they get out of bounds or they're able to get into field goal range and we lose that game. That's better than time because the way Joe Burrow was playing the other night, you're going to tell me you're going to tell me that he couldn't have done that.
Yes. Shut up now and listen to me. There's two big flaws with what you just said. First of all, I got 3 daughters. You know that, right? You know that my wife is expecting another one, and we hope it's the boy. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the first lesson this little boy is gonna learn is to never listen to Uncle Aaron. Because here's the first part, and honestly, the most important. If you die swinging, is it different than you dying laying down?
Listen.
Just say it. Yes. There's pride in that, right? You are doing everything.
But this is the season is a chess match.
You are.
If you're in the NFC West or any other division in the league, and there's a 2-1 team or a 3-0 team, and you got some work to do in order to start making a playoff chase because you're 0-2. All day, but you have a sorry Redskins team who whooped your ass at 1-2. You think it can't be done by the Bengals with 20 seconds left, and then you're tied with the worst team in the NFL last year, who the only reason they're in games is because of their quarterback, and then you want to give their quarterback an opportunity to put you at 0-3. I'm completely against that because I know it's a 2-team division, and I know it's going to come down to week 17, and Dallas is going to be trying to play their way in. I know that. I've seen it for 5 out of 10 years.
Before you repeat yourself a third time, I'm going to address you, or it's going to come down to the last week because that's also nuts. But to finish the first question, is it better to take the shot and lose than lay down and tie? Yes, it is, because let's be honest, and I think we agree. Miles Sanders was missed, right? If Miles Sanders isn't missed, that game's different. We agree?
Is he missed? Like when he was out?
15 yards over his
of course.
head.
Yeah,
right?
uh-huh.
If Miles Sanders isn't overthrown by 15 yards, it's a different game. We agree.
Yeah.
You know that play was executed to perfection. You only ran it one time. Even if you just flip the play and run it the opposite direction, you have a play that you know your guy gets open. And what we don't know right now after 2 weeks is if Carson Wentz is the guy. We don't know that anymore. That we have no clue. They didn't know that going into the season, which is why they took a quarterback in the second round. Let's be real about this. That's why they took Jalen Hurts, because they don't trust Carson Wentz. Period, point blank. There's no other reason. There's too much need they could have assessed with that pick, not taking Jalen Hurts, right? You take that shot to find out 2 things. 1, can Carson Wentz still make that throw? Is Carson Wentz still the guy in the clutch?
It's week 3 with no training camp. Like
2.
What?
Whoa!
It's
2.
week 3. It's week 3. They played the Redskins.
I made a point. Shut up! I'm not talking about the games. I said number 1 was that point. Number 2. Okay, number 2. You do not ever make your team think as the head coach that you don't trust them to close out. That's part 1. Right now, part 2, they're going to play in for the playoffs. So first of all, a quick question with a yes or no answer. You believe right now on, what is it, the 29th of September, that the Philadelphia Eagles will go into week 16 competing for this division?
Yes.
Here's why you're wrong. What is their record right now?
0-2-1.
Who do they play next week?
San
Francisco.
Okay, and then Pittsburgh the next week and Baltimore the next week, right?
Winner loss in San Francisco.
They're going to lose.
0-3-1. Pittsburgh, winner loss.
This is my point, though. Hold on.
Pittsburgh, winner loss. Pittsburgh, winner loss.
Hold on. You're telling me that you can't tell your team they're going to lay down and die, and now we're just chalking up 3 losses for the Eagles. We're just chalking it up.
Pittsburgh, winner loss.
Next 3 games look like a loss, but so did last year going into Green Bay. I'm not sure.
If we're lucky, they'll win 1, and it's the Pittsburgh game, right? We agree they're not going to beat Baltimore. We agree they're not going to beat San Francisco. That makes you 1-4-1, almost halfway through the season. And you believe that almost halfway through the season, 1-4-1 is competing for the division.
But if Dallas
wins the division,
but if Dallas is 2-5, or if Dallas is 2-4, then yeah. This division's going to be won at 7-9.
No chance. 8-8 or 9-7 division. Period. You know why? Because Washington, the Washington football team, the replacements, the no names, are probably going to win 7 or 8 themselves, and they are the 3rd worst team in the division.
No, they're not.
You got your mind, dog. You got your mind, bro. You got your mind.
So we disagree. So listen, coaching obviously matters in this league. I feel like you can't run a playbook. That being said, we just saw Kyle Shanahan, as we discussed a little earlier, Justin. And it's a game I didn't want to touch, but that was one of your locks, by the way, going in, playing the Giants. And I know the Giants are a sorry team. I'm curious to see how another coach performs, because I don't ever see teams as injured as the Eagles are, and the Niners are as injured as the Eagles are, and they just whooped up on the Giants. I think it was like 36-9 or something like that. So that's what a Shanahan does for you, right? That's the difference between some coaching.
That's the difference now. So you agree, Doug Pederson is not a great coach.
Yeah, I can say that at this point. I have enough evidence to work with. Right?
4 seasons, 1 good one.
And you could have started a lot of these seasons a lot better and not had to play that last week for a playoff position. So,
Real quick, we got to talk about the fact that I bailed you out and shouldn't have given you a parlay. And the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, got their teeth knocked out.
The old Justin guarantee. It's all right. That was a eye-opening game. Lamar Jackson said last night the Chiefs are the kryptonite to the Baltimore Ravens, and he's absolutely right. He looked like an average quarterback. They made him look like an average quarterback. Another thing, Andy Reid is a phenomenal coach, and we drove him out of Philadelphia with overreactions, fan bases going like
14 years. 14 years he got. He did not get.
And he's gotten better. He's gotten better.
No,
he was
absolutely
innovative guy.
Yes.
So he's a great coach at this point. Just won his first Super Bowl. We're all happy for him. Now to rub salt in the wound, yesterday or 2 days ago at this point.
Where's the full string? Choo-choo!
But not only does Nick Foles lead a comeback win, and I have. You're still not going to convince me because I have a counter to this as well. But it wasn't only Nick Foles that did it. Justin Jefferson, who everyone was clamoring for before the draft, who were pissed when we took Rager over him, I think had 7 or 8 receptions, 175 yards, and a touchdown. So we got whammed on 2 decisions. And you have to remember, too, these are mostly Howie's decisions. Now, Doug obviously has some say in the roster and what he wants. how he structures the roster, does the cap, all that. That being said, what did you make of what Nick Foles did the other day? And should we overreact or underreact to what Justin Jefferson just did?
Who gives a shit about Nick Foles? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I agree.
Matter. You know why it doesn't matter? Because Nick Foles doesn't wear a fucking Eagles uniform. Who cares? Nick Foles won us a Super Bowl in 2017. We love you, Nick. Thank you. Thank you for your time served. You now may move on. I don't want to hear Nick Foles is a better quarterback than Carson Wentz, because he's not. Carson's having a very bad season. There's no question about it, and it's on him to rebound. But if you believe that Nick Foles is better quarterback than Carson Wentz, you are a certified stupid person. So who cares about Nick Foles? No surprise. Do you know why? When has Nick Foles been good? When he has to come in at the end of a season or in the middle of a game and take over and rah the guys and the backup guy, and he wins a couple of games. Who cares? The Bears
not going to happen next week.
The Bears are terrible. Period. Justin Jefferson's interesting, man. We talked about this during the draft and months ago after the draft. I love Justin Jefferson. I don't think that he was as hyped as he got. I don't think that he's the guy that's going to do what he did this past week every day. I think he's a guy that's going to come in flashes. I think a lot of what he did was where he played and who his quarterback was. But we said this. I mean, it was very clear. It was Jerry Jeudy was the consensus number one. Your number two, my number two is T. Higgins. I know you were also high on him. I know that Rager was right up there for us. I think 3 and 4 for each one of us, wherever that was. Justin Jefferson was right there. Justin Jefferson, to me, was Henry Ruggs. A solid player, but I didn't see spectacular out of him. I see Jalen Rager, and at the peak of the ceiling, I see Antonio Brown. I see Justin Jefferson, and I see, like, Keenan Allen for those couple of years he was relevant. You know what I'm saying? It's just a different level of star I saw, which is why I had Rager a couple of spots above. Of course it hurts, dude. Come on, man. Rager's out hurt. Carson's having a horrible year, so even when he was in, he couldn't look that good. Carson's missing throws left, right, and center. Justin Jefferson's a good wide receiver, just like CeeDee Lamb is. CeeDee Lamb is going to be a good receiver in Dallas for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Does it irk me? Absolutely, because Howie Roseman's got 1,000 of these misses. This one doesn't hurt as bad because I see the future of it. I'm not looking at it for what's affecting me this week in football. I'm looking at what the career's going to be, what the whole type of player is. Justin Jefferson's very this type of game. Jalen Rager's a guy that can break a game at any moment.
Well, so we talked about Jefferson, and one of the things we said about him, we talked about this extensively. Jalen Rager was actually second on my board behind Jeudy. You could do him or CeeDee Lamb. I liked them both, and then T. Higgins was fourth on my board. He tore us up last week, by the way. Great target for Joe Carroll. Justin Jefferson, biggest strength was and biggest weakness was that he played in the slot at LSU with NFL players around him and some guys on the NFL defense, and he ran uncovered out of the slot the majority of his snaps. His longest play last week, which pretty much stuffed up his stat sheet, was a 70-yard touchdown reception where he was in the slot uncovered. Now, when he's in the slot uncovered, he's very good at getting on the same page with his quarterback and finding space. He caught the ball, he made a guy miss, and it was a 70-yard touchdown. Justin Jefferson could end up being a great player, but let's not gloss over week 1 and 2. I think it was 5 receptions for 35 or 40 yards. So he was averaging 2 receptions and 20 yards a game. When he's on the outside, he can't beat press coverage. And let's not also forget that Jalen Rager has been missed on about 3 passes, and 2 of them were deep balls. So if you want to talk about stuffing up a stat sheet, Jalen Rager's stats would be on par or better right now with Justin Jefferson if our quarterback could throw an accurate pass.
No doubt. So I think that outrage is a little bit misplaced.
Yeah, so if he does it for a couple weeks, okay, maybe I fucked up. If he starts doing it out of the slot in man press, okay, maybe I fucked up.
Game 3 is a rookie. Calm down, dude.
Yeah, awesome. He put up Moss numbers in game 3. All credit to Justin Jefferson. Phenomenal game. Great fucking job. You also have Thielen on the other side of you and Dalvin Cook in the fucking backfield. Okay, I don't want to hear it. So the Nick Foles thing. We saw this with Justin Herbert last week, where there was a team that prepped to play. prepped to play Tyrod Taylor, and they saw Justin Jefferson line up, and he torched them for 350 yards and a touchdown. Do you know why? Because they weren't prepared for Justin Herbert. They had no idea what he did well, no idea what he didn't do well. They were prepared for Tyrod Taylor. So what happened this week was we had a team coming in that prepared for Mitch Trubisky. Nick Foles subs in at halftime, plays a phenomenal game, and that's what Nick Foles can occasionally do. But I have 8 years, Justin. I have 8 years of Nick Foles history that tells me for the majority of his starts, he's going to be average or below. And at some point in the season, if you try to get him to play 16 games, he's going to get hurt, and he's more injury prone than Carson Wentz is. So if Nick Foles comes in and he leads Chicago to the playoffs, we'll come back and we'll have a different discussion. But I don't want to hear about this for the next 4 or 5 weeks until he actually does it. I see him doing it consistently, and he stays healthy also, because his injury history is worse than Carson Wentz. So let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes next week and the week after, when they have to line up and the team's completely prepared for Nick Foles standing in the pocket, not being able to escape it, can't scramble at all, and has to sit there and throw some passes to Allen Robinson and almost nobody else, because Tariq Cohen just got injured, and they just don't have a lot of weapons. So let's see how that goes. If he lights it up, I apologize for the last year of everything. He's got some familiar faces. He's familiar with Matt Nagy's offense. He's got a quarterback's coach that he's familiar with. This is a position where he should do well if he's the guy. So let's see if he's the guy. And I have 4 years of Carson Wentz material that tells me he's better than he's played for the last 3 games. And we're 3 games in, and we want to bench him for Jalen Hurts. Let me make a point real quick. If you think Jalen Hurts right now can go into San Fran, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore to start his career and not get his confidence completely shattered and kicked into the ground, you are absolutely crazy. Jalen Hurts was the runner-up for the Heisman last year. He threw for 3,800 yards, something like 35 TDs and 8 interceptions, like MVP NFL numbers, right? Didn't turn the ball over, threw a lot of touchdowns. When he had to go up against ranked teams, he did not have good games. He was good on the ground almost all the time, but he wasn't a good quarterback from the pocket. He played, I forget who it was, they were the 13th ranked team, completed 15 of 31 passes for 217 yards and an interception. That was his performance against the 13th ranked team in the nation at the time.
Sure.
Then he goes and he plays the 25th ranked team. I think it was, I have to look it up. I looked it up earlier. 17 of 24, 287 yards, 1 TD, 1 pick, 23 carries for 38 yards. So he couldn't even get it up, off the ground. That was against 25th ranked Texas, 235 yards. So we're talking about a guy who all year long against poor college defenses was lighting it up 400, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, 130 on the ground, 2 touchdowns, lighting it up, and then played a couple teams who have good programs with decent players on defense, 200, 250 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and he's supposed to go into Pittsburgh and win a game for us?
So let me ask you a quick question. So I got a question. I have a hypothetical for you. And then we can move on to the NBA if you want. So I feel like Carson's value is the lowest now that it's ever been. He's worth the least now than he ever has been. But I feel like his value has been unaffected to a team like the Colts with a 39-year-old Phillip Rivers, Jacoby Brissett, who's not the real answer, Frank Reich, who obviously created the almost MVP that Carson Wentz was. I think he's as valuable now as he was 2 years ago to Frank Reich and the Colts.
Sure.
If you could get, let's say the Colts, because we're both high on the Colts, we think they might be a fringe playoff team. Let's say you get like the 14th to 18th overall pick and one of their starting linebackers. I don't know most of them by name, but let's say that they're better than Nate Gary because they probably are. And you have Jalen Hurts now, and you know that the likelihood now of you going 3-12-1, 4-11-1 is higher, and your pick will be in the top 10. Do you, if you had to choose right now today, you don't get to see any more games. Right now that we're talking is the trade deadline. Do you pull the trigger on that move and grab the capital to start the retool that we know is needed in the next year or two?
Well, not unless so they don't want to retool because they just paid their quarterback too much money to do that.
But they have to.
Okay. So the only reason the Eagles do that, if they've seen enough from Jalen Hurts in practice and scrimmages where they're confident enough to move up from Carson Wentz. I haven't watched their practices or scrimmages, so it's impossible to answer. What I will say is I'm not ready to just throw away the entire roster on Jalen Hurts and a linebacker. Not to mention, since we don't draft well and can't seem to develop players, I don't care about the 14th or 15th.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Derek, that's a fair point.
If we've and here's another question I have for you. At what point does it become that we're not missing on players? Because every first round or second, there's teams that every year get a couple picks that it just end up being good, and we have like whole draft classes that end up being non-starters or not on the team. At what point is it the coaches can't coach these guys up and develop them, and maybe we did draft a couple of the right players and just couldn't do it? I mean,
so that's a great question. Let's look at some of the guys. Jordan Hicks, who led the league in tackles last year, one example. Nelson Aguilar, who doesn't look like the Hall of Famer he did in Game 1 for the Raiders, but has done better than he did here.
Not better than he did in our Super Bowl year. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, but that Super Bowl year, he was phenomenal in the playoff run, and that was getting thrown to by Nick Foles in an entirely different Doug Pederson offense. It's not what we have now. He is absolutely better there than he was here most prior. Look at Raheem Mostert, who had a 4-touchdown, 188-yard or some game in the playoffs last year. I mean, there's definitely guys that fall through the cracks, bro. There's no doubt. And it's because they let the Jordan Hicks and the Raheem Mosterts go, and they keep the Wendell Carters and the Corey Clements and the Nate Garys and I don't even remember the name of the rest of their linebackers because nobody knows who the fuck they are. Yeah, man, like I don't disagree. Derek Barnett is that pick from Indianapolis. And do I trust Howie with that pick again? Absolutely not.
Derek Barnett.
Disappointment.
It's like you broke Reggie White's sack record, bro.
How are you this bad?
And you're on a line. And here's the thing: even if the coaches can't develop them, you're on a
stacked line.
Your personality should be enough to go up to a guy like a Brandon Graham and a Fletcher Cox and be like, hey, bro, how do I get to where you're at? And It's like he's not even on the field enough to do that, but I don't see he doesn't make any big plays. He can play some run D sometime, but for a guy that broke a sack record, he's an awful pass rusher. I mean, I can't rush the quarterback for his life. But then you got a guy like, when I think of like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I'm like, if he went to another team off the rip, and let's be honest, bro, Philly, if you're a social media kid in this generation and you come into a league at 20 years old, you got to have brass balls. Because if you don't get off to a hot start in the NFL and your psyche's not there, you're done after 2 years. So if Philly is one of the roughest places to have a bad start, and
might be the worst.
You're never going to get off. They don't support you, nothing like that. They don't try to. The most I've seen them do anything was trying to move along Markelle Fultz, and then after a couple years of him not even being on the court, they're like, all right, bro, like I'm happy you got traded. I'm good for you. You got traded to Orlando. But you don't see that at all with Philadelphia fans. So I feel like you got to find the most mentally tough guys who aren't always on their phone, don't want to build like a brand offline. Like, I don't know if you watch Deshaun Jackson. I watch him on Instagram all the time. Guy looks like he does all this training and all this show. Guy doesn't even want to play, bro. He's not even injured. He just doesn't even want to play.
He's on pitch count, right?
It's frustrating to even have those guys on the team. So
to wrap up the Eagles, you're ridiculous and think that they're going to compete in Week 17 for the division, which is absolutely crazy.
Every year it's the same thing, bro.
The Philadelphia Football Eagles will not win more than 6 games this season.
It's like a written script, bro. It happens every year. All right,
See this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins is the top.
We'll see. We might be lucky if we get to 6 wins. All right. Let's go to some Sixers news. So a little weird.
Crazy. Can we put the Miami Lakers series in between? I can't deal with your crazy on top of crazy. I need a break for a minute.
All right, we'll go to the Sixers last. Let's talk about this Lakers-Miami series.
No shot, right? We agree. No competition.
Yeah, no. So I'm supposed to believe that the best team in the East is going to be now I'm supposed to believe, because I've been hearing different for the last decade, by the way. So now I'm supposed to believe that the best team in the East is going to be the best team in the West, and the best team in the West has LeBron James. Now, if you told me that the best team in the East had LeBron James and they were playing the best team in the West, I'd be like, all right, the guys on the East have a shot. This could go 6 or 7. But LeBron James with Anthony Davis on the best team with the guys with the highest IQ, what's going to happen in this series? How many games? What's LeBron going to do? And where is
this is easy. So let's first of all, game 1 is opening up at a 5-point line for the Lakers. That's nuts. A 5-point line for a Miami team who really props where props are due, dog. They looked good, bro. Jimmy Butler's got that team playing their ass off, no doubt.
And took a step up. Yeah.
Oh, no doubt. I look at matchups, right? So I'm gonna look at Anthony Davis and I'm gonna look at Bam Adebayo. That's an easy decision. There's no competition there because it's Anthony Davis, right? So I'm gonna look at LeBron James and then I'm gonna look at Jimmy Butler, which also there ain't a decision. That's LeBron James. There ain't a decision. When you get down to the third scoring option, we've talked about this before. The Lakers don't really have a third. They've got a weird combination of Caruso, Kuzma, Morris, Danny Green, Rondo. There really isn't a third guy. They spread it around past the first two. And you've got Tyler Herro, which I will tell you, probably in one of these 4 games, by the way, that's all it'll take. They'll win in 4. One of these 4 games, Tyler Herro will do 30 points. He'll drop 30. But this series is not close. I don't feel that Miami will spend a second competing. This is LeBron James' way of showing the world that the Eastern Conference was not the reason that I am who I am. And I don't think Anthony Davis will ever take a second to not play with that same ferocity for LeBron. And I don't think that this is the game 1 line is 5, dog. They're going to win the first game by 4 or 5. It's going to be close to the line. They're going to kick their teeth in game 2. Game 3 is going to get really, really gritty. It's going to come down to the middle of the fourth quarter before LA pulls away by 5 or 6. And as soon as they win game 3, Miami quit, and they're going to destroy them in game 4. It is a 4-game clean sweep with no seconds of doubt of who's going to win this series.
Yeah, so the Miami and Celtics series was interesting because what happened towards the end of that series was Miami realized at some point, Herro went off one game. Jimmy Butler had one big game. Duncan Robinson had a solid series. But down the line in that series, Bam realized at one point, holy shit, there's no one on this Celtics team that can guard me. And he just took the game over, and the Miami Heat, seeing that, let him take the game over.
And then Brad Stevens answered with Enes Kanter, and it got a little bit better for a minute. And then Jimmy and Tyler Herro took it back again and said, okay, guys, we'll win this way now.
And Kanter and Tice, whatever. So now there's 3 guys that can not stop but slow down. Bam is not a better player than Jokic, especially on the offensive end. He's a better defensive player. Yes. But if you're going to tell me that a combo of Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee, and a little bit of Markieff Morris can't guard Bam, I'm going to tell you you're a fucking liar, right? So we're going to win. You win the bigs matchup. Now you got some athletic wings. Herro can go off. Duncan Robinson can go off. Jimmy Butler can go off. I'm pretty confident. I've seen Alex Caruso play some pretty good defense over the last couple series. Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma can take care of the guys on the wings.
And Rondo can guard the wing and shoot from outside now.
Yep. Yeah, somehow, right? I don't know how that happened, but yeah, he can do that now. And then at one point in the last series, LeBron was like, hold up, this guy's going off. I'm going to guard him. And that was Jamal Murray. And Jamal Murray on the offensive side of the ball is better than anybody on that Heat team. So if LeBron sees something becoming a problem, especially late in games, guess who's clamping that guy down? They have that guy, and they have a couple of those guys. They're going to swarm them on the defensive side of the ball. It was funny because the first couple games when the Celtics applied defensive pressure, they won most of the quarters in those first two games, and the Heat just took over the fourth and ended up just really winning that fourth quarter. But when the Celtics put the clamps on Miami, they were running away with quarters, and the Lakers are a step up from that. And, oh, yeah, they're really well fucking coached. Frank Vogel has done a phenomenal job. So it's going to be a great coaching matchup as well with Spo and Frank Vogel. I'm excited to watch it. I think it's Lakers in 5. I think most of these games are going to be close to the middle of the fourth quarter.
What game does Miami take?
What's that?
What game does Miami take?
If they're going to take one, it's game 1.
You think so?
Yeah, the Lakers had a little extra rest. They come out maybe a little bit.
Let's put this week's friendly 50 on that. The Miami Heat are not winning game 1.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to bet that they're not winning game 1 when I know.
So you want to go sweep? I'm down with sweep.
I will bet that they will take a game in this series.
Okay, I'm down. Let's put the 50 on that.
You do that. So, yeah, I mean, I believe they're good enough to win 1 game. I don't believe they're good enough to win 2 or 3. LeBron's going to get his 4th chip. He's going to be the MVP finals unless Anthony Davis has a historic run. And by the way, if Anthony Davis has a historic run, there's no way they're fucking losing that series. So 2 things to watch right there. It's going to be 5 games. It's going to be pretty easy. And LeBron is going to be on a mission this year for that 4th ring in his 10th finals, tying Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who a lot of people think should be in that GOAT conversation. It's just LeBron's been so good with his decision making, and Anthony Davis been so good on the offensive end. It's just I don't see it being close.
I'm with you.
So that's pretty easy. We can move on from that.
All right, let's do it.
Let's talk. You have something to say about this? By the way,
you're nuts. You're a psychopath to think that this is even possible.
Well, I don't know what you're going to say about it, but real quick, Justin went 7-7 in his picks last week. I, of course, went 9-5, which I'm just going to keep sweeping through, just. But I will say that all 3 of our locks, each of our locks covered the spread. Good picks. I think you had San Fran, Green Bay, and I think maybe both.
Atlanta. I lost Atlanta.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Now, what was the final score of that game? It was a point, wasn't it?
A point or 2, yeah.
Atlanta was getting 2.5, so I actually did win against the spread. So I did get all 3 right.
What was the final score of that game?
40-39, I thought, wasn't it?
Okay.
I'm almost positive it was.
No, it was 30-26.
30. So I just missed. Yeah.
I had the Patriots, which you laughed at me for, so I'm
mad I gave you that back.
Celebrate that. I had Green Bay as well, and I believe I also took the Seahawks, and I thought that the Panthers would upset the Chargers, getting a week to prepare for Justin Herbert, and that also happened. Just to boast a little bit. So let's move on to the coaching. So usually when a team loses a playoff series like that, and they're like a front runner and the coach has been there for a while and they're tired of it, so on and so forth, a coach gets fired right away, right? So we were pretty sure that we had inside information that Mike D'Antoni was going to be the coach. And now it sounds from sources like they're looking real hard at Doc Rivers. Why would they not hire Doc?
First of all, it's never going to come down to them making the decision to not hire Doc Rivers. I want to ask you a very simple question. What appeals to Doc Rivers about this team, about this city, and about this management group, right? So Doc Rivers went through Donald Sterling, which was a terrible, terrible ownership group, right? We have a terrible owner. Josh Harris is probably the worst owner in basketball. Terrible ownership, right? Then we go down to management. I don't think Elton Brand is awful. We just don't know yet because he's a brand new GM. You have no support in management. You're coming to Philadelphia. You're not going to New York, which is a major market. You're not going to South Beach to sit on the beach every year. It snows 10 feet a year in Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia area. Why this team? Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid haven't showed you for a second that they can exist peacefully together on the floor. You have no depth. You have terrible contracts that are almost immovable. What would Doc Rivers ever want with this franchise?
But he wants a head coaching position, so where do you think he goes?
Well, let me ask you this question.
He's going to go somewhere.
What is the most attractive position right now that's available? Simple answer. Easy answer. New Orleans. Zion. Easy answer. Easy answer. Zion, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart. Lonzo looks like he's not entirely worthless now. That is the up-and-coming market. That is what a Doc Rivers goes for. The reason why we're going to end up with Mike D'Antoni is because Doc Rivers is, by this much, a better coach than Mike D'Antoni is. Because Doc also hasn't won anything. Doc won with the Big Three in Boston, where Kevin Garnett was basically transforming the league. That's what Kevin Garnett did. He won, no, not 3 titles, idiot. The Big Three.
No, he won once.
No, idiot. The Big Three.
No, I'm saying Doc won 1 title was what with the Celtics is what I'm saying.
With the Big Three is what I said.
I know what you're getting. I was just saying he only won 1 title.
And it's the point I'm making. You have prime Blake Griffin, you wasted away. Prime Chris Paul, you wasted away. You have never shown me anything. And then that's the other side as a fan. Why do I want Doc Rivers? Not to say that Mike D'Antoni's a better option. But I don't want Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is there for 10 years when he signs on. If Mike D'Antoni comes in 2 years is garbage, you can move on from Mike D'Antoni. Who cares? You don't move on from a guy like Doc Rivers. Tell me why? Yes, that's what I want to know.
Well, no, I'm comparing 2 coaches that I think I don't like either option. Coaching matters in the NBA. I think as much or more than almost any other sport because you have 5 guys, you're playing matchups, there's guys subbing in and out all the time. You have 1 star player that can take over games compared to teams that have to work collectively as a unit, so on and so forth. There's not like 5 different guys managing your football team in different positions. There's one coach, 1 assistant coach, and like a shooting and dribbling coach or a defensive guy, and that's it, right? So, Mike D'Antoni, obviously just as bad, wasted away prime Steve Nash, 2-time MVP, Amari Stoudemire, and a bunch of awesome wing 3-point shooters. They were like the coolest team, the most fun team to watch offensively, just almost like the Rockets were a couple years ago. They got real boring last year with just James Harden dribbling around the court, getting Russell Westbrook. It's been a shit show. But he seems to have a top, team in the West on a regular basis and can't cash in. And I think these guys, the NBA is kind of moving on from what you would call, you got to see what's working and replicate it and do it better. And Mike D'Antoni and Doc Rivers have been in this league long enough to have the option to do that, and neither of them have done it. And there's a report that came out today. There was this arrogance that Doc just couldn't take out of his players because they thought they could turn it on and turn it off all the time. He treated Kawhi differently. If you're coming into a Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid situation and it's already a shit show kind of the way that it is, there's no confidence from me that you're going to be able to turn that around if you're too much of a player's coach, because Brett Brown was a player's coach and he couldn't get fucking anything out of his players. Now, the report that came from Jimmy Butler on JJ Redick's podcast saying they're watching film, no one's saying anything, no one's getting coached up, he's looking around. How do I ask questions? Who do I go to make adjustments? What the fuck is going on? I think Doc Rivers and Mike D'Antoni are both way better options than Brett Brown. I just don't think they're the answer to get you through a Boston, a Miami, a Toronto, a Milwaukee at some point. Could you, with a little better coaching? Yes, but those aren't the guys.
So look, I was very low on this guy at the beginning, and I've done a ton of research into what's been said about him by his players, by his colleagues.
Don't say the guy that I was saying would be a great fit. Don't bring him back up and tell me that you now think he's going to be a great fit. Don't do it because I was just going to get there.
So go ahead. Of the options available, now that Billy Donovan is gone, because I think most people with a basketball brain agree that Billy Donovan was the guy, I don't think that D'Antoni and Rivers are good fits for different reasons, but they're just as bad as each other for different reasons. I really believe the only guy that makes sense, and it's the reason why Doc Rivers got fired, because this is the guy that's going to take over the other side of LA against his former player. I really think that if you knew you were going to lose Billy Donovan, you had to have gone harder after Ty Lue.
I agree. And the reason, and the only reason, is because
he's a former player.
Look at the history of LeBron and look at where he's won, what coaches he's been friendly with, and what coaches he's hated, right? Throughout his career.
Sure.
Him and Mike Brown got into it all the time.
Yep.
Him and Spo, you never heard a report come out of Miami that LeBron was pissed off at Spo. Why? Because Spo commands respect and he's a good coach.
Correct.
Goes back to Cleveland. David Blatt gets fired. He promotes Ty Lue, basically. LeBron's the one that promoted Ty Lue. They win a championship. Ty Lue commands respect from his players. Goes to the Lakers. Runs Luke Walton out of town because he can't fucking coach. And LeBron sees that. You can't fucking coach. Not a fucking peep this year from a Frank Vogel coach team. So if I want to know who's a good coach, I'm watching 15 to 20 years of LeBron James making decisions in franchises, having the highest basketball IQ that's ever played out of anybody, and knowing what coaches he's got along with, what coaches he's won championships with, and what coaches you haven't heard a peep from. And one of them was Ty Lue. And the reports coming from that championship series when they were tied and Kyrie hit that shot, they called a timeout at one point. And LeBron started drawing up a play, and the report came out that Ty Lue said, LeBron, shut the fuck up. I got this. How many guys do you think have the balls to go? Do you think Brett Brown would have done that? Absolutely fucking not. And neither would Doc Rivers or Mike D'Antoni or Luke Walton or any of those guys. Billy Donovan might have, but Ty Lue did it. And Ty Lue won a championship against a magnificent, best of all time, probably Golden State team. So I like the Ty Lue hire. People giving me shit for saying it. I would hire him in a second, but it looks like, and you're absolutely right, he's going to probably be the guy that LA promotes from within. He's got the coaching experience. He's won a championship with star players. He commands respect. The players like him, but he's also a stern guy. And I hope that they can go after him and get him, but I bet you're right. He probably is going to stay in LA. Why would you go from LA to Philadelphia? Unless they paid you a lot of fucking money, you wouldn't, right?
So I sent you that proposed potential trade earlier, Paul George for Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert and a pick or some shit.
You didn't send me that. What was it?
I sent it to you on Facebook.
I didn't see it.
So it was a proposed trade of Paul George from the Clippers to Brooklyn for Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie and like a first-round pick. I saw another one that makes a lot more sense to me. It was Montrezl Harrell and Paul George for DeAndre Jordan, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, and like a second-round pick instead of a first. It puts a three-headed monster in the East in Brooklyn in Paul George, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, and it builds out around Kawhi a handful of shooters and guys that can be primary ball handlers.
So let's real quick break down why we have high expectations for Paul George and why he's failed to live up to them in OKC and also the Clippers. First of all, when and we've seen like the first couple of years Paul George was in the league. You remember him and Bron were back in like LeBron's team always beat his team, but Paul George was like, we're like, oh my God, that's the next up and coming superstar right there. That's the guy that like when LeBron slows down, Paul George is going to be right there. Paul George, when he was in Indiana, Paul George is a guy that to get going, he has to have the ball in his hands, right? Yep. So he's with a really good coach, again, in Frank Vogel, who is coaching that Pacers team. He's going off for 30 points a night. He has the ball in his hands. They don't really have like a
big man and Roy Hibbert.
They have a great team, a great defensive team. They create offense off of defense. So he goes to OKC and he's with the biggest ball hog in the NBA, stat padding Russell Westbrook, and he's touching the ball off screens and sitting on the side shooting threes. He never gets a chance to bring the ball up to the court, get into the rhythm, feel the ball, do what he does. You want him to come around screens and shoot threes and drive to the basket and dish. That's not Paul George's game. Paul George is an ISO player who needs the ball in his hand and needs to be the first scoring option, not the second scoring option or the third scoring option. If you want Paul George, he has to be the first scoring option. That doesn't mean you can't build a great team around him, but he needs to be the first. So you want him to go to the Clippers. Kawhi's the first option. Lou Will is actually probably the second option when he's off the bench. He's the one controlling, bringing the ball up. You have Pat Beverly bringing the ball up at different times, but she shouldn't even be touching the basketball. And you want Paul George to stand on the side, and you want him to shoot three-pointers. Kawhi is not a great playmaker enough to get the ball in Paul George's hands enough either to be able to give him enough touches to get hot. So now you want him to go to Brooklyn, where you got KD and Kyrie Irving, and you think he's going to be your third option. If he goes to Brooklyn, you're going to get a great defensive player, but you're going to get a guy that's going to end up averaging 12 to 13 points a game because there's just not enough ball to go around. So if I'm Brooklyn, I already got a guy that can guard Giannis. I got two guys that can go ISO and get me a bucket anytime on offense. I would like to trade a LeVert or a Dinwiddie, not both, because I'm going to need a scorer coming off the bench when those guys need a rest, or just someone in the game with them that can get a bucket besides them. But I'm going after a stretch 4 or a stretch 5 big man that can get me some rebounds, shoot some threes. I don't want a Paul George, and I don't know why these coaches think after watching all of this that Paul George is going to be a good third option on any team.
So Brooklyn needs Kevin Love. That's who Brooklyn needs. Danilo Gallinari. That's what Brooklyn needs. So Paul George is like Derrick Rose, we've talked about this countless times, is like the greatest what if in major sports, let alone the NBA. Like, what could that have been? Paul George, to me, is as big a what if because Paul George at this stage, and he's been around long enough, I feel like I don't want to say make a determination on his career, but really draw a real parallel and comparison. Paul George is Tracy McGrady. When we were kids, dog, Tracy McGrady was incredible, but Tracy McGrady wasn't Kobe. Tracy McGrady wasn't even what LeBron was at 19 years old.
But he had like a 2-3 year stretch where you're like, T-Max, that fucking dude. And people started having that dumb conversation they start having when you have a couple good years comparing to the greats. He had that for a couple years, and he was 23, 24, yeah.
And listen, Tracy McGrady, in my opinion, and we all know opinions are biased, I believe Tracy McGrady's a Hall of Famer. He was a great player for a decent amount of time. And Paul George, very much the same, but I'm in agreement with you. Paul George right now would thrive in Oklahoma City with your second option really being, I guess it's Schroeder if Chris Paul's not on that team. And even if Chris Paul's on that team, Chris Paul is a distribute first point guard.
Point guard.
Right. Yeah. Chris Paul is not a guy that wants to score the ball. So Chris Paul would bring the ball up, set the offense, and dish off to Paul George. And who was it? It was Collison when George was out there, right? In Indy.
Point guard,
a lot like Collison, a very similar player, obviously better, but a similar player. That's the type of place where Paul George is 35, 8, and 4 steals a night. That's the type of situation he needs to thrive. I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think that even if this Kevin Durant blew his ACL this year, I don't think he's a good second behind Kyrie. We saw that with Russell Westbrook. It just doesn't work.
It's either he's on a team where he's the best ISO player on the team, or the team has a point guard that can score but prefers to pass the ball and get him the ball in the spots that he needs to get the ball. So if you're expecting Paul George to go somewhere, be a second or third option and get you 20 to 22 points, that's just not going to happen because that's not his game. We just saw Paul George hit the side of the backboard when he didn't get to touch the ball enough. That's what happened last series. He didn't fucking do anything.
So painful. So true.
Yeah, it's bad. So
listen, right, when are we coming back? We got to do all of our picks before Thursday.
So before Thursday, you're right. We can do it Thursday.
Now, listen, are you doing anything on Thursday morning?
Am I doing anything on Thursday morning?
Yeah, I might be able to make Thursday morning work. We could jump on live.
We could do either tomorrow. We're both off, I think, right?
Yeah.
Or Thursday morning. We'll figure that out. We'll let everybody know. And we'll get that organized. So we're on all not just streaming platforms at this point, but video platforms. So everything YouTube, Facebook page is Facebook/Big Facts, YouTube/Big Facts. We do this on our personal pages. Share this if you liked it. Ask some questions if you want to. We might get back to them. We might not. We hope to. We're busy guys. We'll see you Wednesday or Thursday. Any closing thoughts?
Doc Rivers won't come to the Sixers. The Philadelphia Football Eagles will compete for the worst team in the division, not the winning teams of the division. And I got to address it for just a second for all of the Patriots out there like me who sat down and experienced that dumpster fire shithole of a debate. It was so bad. Everybody listen to me. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative. I don't care if you believe that the yellow party should win. I don't care what you think, but for the love of God, the rhetoric that exists right now coming from one side, go vote. I don't care if it's mail-in. I don't care if it's absentee. I don't care if it's early. I don't care if it's on time. I don't care if it's in rain boots or with an umbrella. Go vote for everybody. Don't go pull a lever for one color or the other. Do your research, educate yourself, and for the love of God, everybody, please, let's just take this shit back from these 80-year-old white dudes that are so disconnected from the rest of us that it doesn't matter which one wins. We gotta be better as a country.
Well said, stamped, and enough said. Big Facts on all streaming platforms. We'll see you tomorrow, the next day. Just, you have a good night. Sell some cars tomorrow. I'm going to go get a freshly nice fade, and I'll see you in a couple days.
All right, Doug.
All right, man.